Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where every episode we're talking about one of the 100 guitar players you need to know about. Today
we're getting weird this week. We're getting weird this week.
Today we're talking about a guitar player that is very near and dear to my own musical tastes, my own playing, my own thoughts about sound and tones and all that stuff. We're talking about Adrian Belew. You may know him from his
I thought you were going to say Eric Clapton.
You may know him from his work with David Bowie.
Yes.
Or the Talking Heads, or Frank Zappa, or King Crimson, or Nine Inch Nails. All that stuff we're talking about today. And we have a very special guest to help us do it. If you're in the guitar community, specifically the guitar pedal community, you're probably familiar with Eastside Music Supply, whether you've been there in person, whether you follow them on Instagram, whether you've read an interview in Premier Guitar that includes co-owner Blair White as one of the interviewees, because Blair has a lot of really, really crucial knowledge to guitar gear, all that stuff. And
he's an insider.
He's an insider. And Adrian himself picked up on that and hired Blair a couple years ago to do some work for him, and had him spec out his rig. I'm not going to tell you about it. We're going to let Blair tell you all about it, but there is deep, deep knowledge in this episode. So we're going to get there. Before we do, we'd like to remind you that you can get at us by dropping us a line at 100guitarist@premierguitar.com. You can also leave us a voicemail or send us a text to 319-423-9734. And if you're watching on YouTube, why don't you click the like button down below, subscribe to the Premier Guitar YouTube channel if you're not already subscribed. If you're listening, do us a favor, subscribe to the podcast, rate and review.
That's right. And today's episode is brought to you by Vega Trem. And they make no drill drop-in tremolos for Strats and Tellys that they go right into the cavity. No routing, no luthier, no micro tuners, no drama.
No drama.
And about, 4 or 5 years ago, Adrian had a couple Fender Strats made for him, custom shop ones built by Ron Thorne. And he dropped the Vega Trem VT1 Ultra Trem in them. And so you'd see him. There's a red one and a blue one. You probably see him a lot on the Beat Tour, see it on the Talking Head stuff he does with Jerry Harrison. They do a tour, Main and Light. They have a smooth feel, rock solid tuning, stainless steel saddles, precision knife edge, and adjustable spring tension. Give you the slinkiest dive bombs while the guitar snapbacks in tune every time.
You know I love a slinky dive bomb.
That's right.
Especially when it snaps back in tune. New for 2025 is the VT1 Evolution, which debuted at NAMM this winter. It lets players flip between full floating Floyd-style range and an instant hardtail block mode, perfect for Satriani-style pitch pyrotechnics one moment and drop D riffs the next. Gotta say, that sounds pretty sick. I wouldn't mind having one of those on one of my guitars. The Vega Trem was designed by Spanish guitarist and engineer Isaac Vega, and they've been built in Europe with top-grade steel and a tight local supply chain. So check out the Vega Trems today and consider it on your next Adrian Belew tribute build. Why not?
That's right. Twang Bar King approved.
All right, so we're going to bring on Blair. We're going to talk about Adrian. We're going to get all into how he makes those crazy sounds. All right, Blair White, thank you for being here with us today. Blair,
yeah, man.
Blair is the co-owner of Eastside Music Supply in Nashville, which recently moved. I've never been to the new place. It's been a little while since I've come through Nashville, but I have enjoyed my visit to Eastside. I think I've come through once, but it's possibly twice to the old spot. But the new spot's bigger, right?
The new spot is bigger. It is fantastic. I feel like we have a real store now. It's really rad. You got to swing by, Nick. Check it out.
Oh man, I'm there this week.
Oh well, look, I'll see you I'll see you this week then.
Yeah, I'll swing by. I come in on. I'm there all weekend.
Awesome. Yeah, dude, you got to come check it out. It's a great spot. It's a big old building, and we built it out and had the opportunity to kind of do it up a little bit like we'd like with like a blank, clean slate, blank canvas kind of thing. So very stoked to be in the new spot for sure.
Great.
Awesome. Well, I've tapped you for your opinion before for pieces I was writing about amps, for example. We talked
Yeah.
about all sorts of awesome amps like trainers and 70s
Yep.
Bassmans. But
I remember that. Yep.
today we called you up because you are the guy these days to talk to about Adrian Belew's rig, Adrian
Yeah.
Belew's, what he's got going on in there. I know that other members of Premier Guitar have talked to you about that stuff, but here we are. We're
Hmm.
talking about Adrian Belew being one of the guitar players we think you should know.
Yeah.
So I will start this off by saying I consider myself a big Adrian Belew fan, but he's so prolific. There's still so many holes I have in his catalog and in
Oh
his
yeah.
work that it's like I kind of like that. Like it's kind of a bummer when you find your favorite people and then you just have to keep listening to the same stuff. And then
Yeah.
and so it's like it's kind of cool that I have stuff of his that is like I rank among my like biggest North Stars of like cool guitar playing. And we can get to that. We'll talk about all that stuff. But there's still so much that I have that I don't know about Adrian. And one of my big holes is definitely like the gear that he uses to get the sounds that
Yeah.
he makes. I don't understand it. I watch videos, I see him playing live, and I don't know what's going on. So I think I warned you. I'm going to ask you some questions, but you don't have to know the answers. But like, I don't know.
I'll try my best. Yeah.
Short
He's
of calling up
definitely,
Adrian.
yeah, his catalog is as big as his gear list that he likes to use. It's
Yeah,
huge. So prolific's a good word.
yeah,
Innovative is absolutely another word. He definitely is a guitar player that people should know about if they don't for
yeah.
somehow. Yeah, for sure.
So just to get into it, how did you and Adrian meet, and how did you start working together?
Sure. So he brought in a few pieces of gear at the old shop location to get worked on.
Okay.
And he just kind of, came in and we fixed some stuff on the spot for him. And he was using, it was an old Fractal Axe Effects Ultra unit, which I thought was interesting. Just that he, being who he was, I'm sure that Fractal would give him any new piece of gear that he
Yeah.
wanted. And here he is using something that's 15 years old, basically. But he loved it, didn't want to swap, nothing like that. So that's how I initially met him, was just doing some repairs. And then he called, probably a couple years ago now at this point, and had asked if I would be interested in helping him uh, recreate a lot of the sounds, getting ready for the Beat Tour from the Crimson records he was a part of. And I was really taken aback. I was kind of like, me? You want me to help you get sounds that, sure. Like, yes, it's one of those, like, almost like the fake it till you make it. I'm like, yes, I can do that. And I'm
You know what
sitting
the
there
answer
like,
is supposed to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
yeah. And
I
it's
play
like,
mandolin. I just got to stay 3 pages ahead of you in the book.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So that was kind of like hey, come out. And I was just kind of like, I'm available. You tell me when. He's like, well, how about, next week? Come out to the house. And so that kind of started, this pre-planning for the Beat Tour that he was doing. That tour with playing the Crimson records that he was a part of with Tony Levin, and then having Danny Carey play drums from Tool, and having Steve Vai play guitar for Fripp's place. And it was insane, so it was a big deep study on his rig from the late 70s and 80s, and trying to find what started out as us trying to find modern things that could kind of do it,
Yeah.
and quickly turned into hey, let's just build a really overly complex rig and have your old shit and your new shit.
Okay.
So yeah, so it was that's kind of how we met, and we just kind of hit it off, and clicked. Our brains clicked, and our musical language connected really well. And so I've just been kind of his dude for the past few years, which I feel honored and very privileged to be, because he's such an incredible human and fascinating guitar player.
How familiar were you with the beat material, that era of King Crimson, before you started working with him?
So familiar enough to know that I was getting myself into some really interesting guitar sounds. My appreciation for Adrian kind of started probably in my teenage years, actually I'm a big Nine Inch Nails fan. And I remember when The Fragile came out, I was just like, how is, Trent getting these sounds? Well, you look at the personnel that he used on the record and it's just extensive. There's so many people that he collaborated with. And a few songs specifically, I was just like really loved the tones of. And I found out, hey, that's Adrian Belew. That's the guy who played with Zappa and the Talking Heads and, Bowie and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, that checks. And so then, my initial, King Crimson knowledge is, those early records without Adrian. And I thought they were cool, super proggy, a little over my head in some places, but really neat. And I stumbled into the records, the Discipline and Beat, Three of a Perfect Pair that Adrian was on. And those are my favorite. They're, I think, to me, are the most melodic, the most like songy songs out of the Crimson catalog.
Mm-hmm.
So I was familiar enough, with his work with King Crimson, but not like a super nerd by any means.
Yeah.
I am now, but when I
Yeah,
first
right.
was approached, when I was kind of like, oh, I got to brush up on some of this stuff for sure.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I've musically speaking, I live in a pretty experimental guitar prog adjacent space, and I just so many people, so many collaborators and friends. Crimson is like one of their biggest guitar bands, and
Yeah.
for me, I mean, I like the earlier stuff. I like the '70s stuff, but I'm an outlier that like you, the Adrian era stuff is the stuff that really gets me.
Yeah.
I never like I didn't really click with the earlier stuff when I would hear it, and then yeah, I don't know, when I first heard that material, it's like I was just like all in. I was like, right, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And then I explored Adrian through his work with Bowie, through his work with Talking Heads, through Zappa, and it's like that stuff for me, that's the core of like what I'm looking for in like
Yeah.
cool, weird, freaky guitar stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jason, how about you? What's your Crimson vibe?
I mean, I think probably like I became aware of Crimson because of the very early records, the first couple of records. But it was nice because I came into Crimson probably through a group called the California Guitar Trio, who
Yeah.
played who are disciples of
Mhm.
Fripp and his various tunings and all
Yep.
that.
I think they primarily use new standard tuning, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And then really in grad school, I played in a 5-guitar group that played a bunch of those California Guitar Trio things in standard tuning.
Oh, wow.
And so that was an interesting challenge and helped me kind of wrap my head around it. And then it wasn't until that point that I went and kind of discovered those early 80s, those trio of records.
Mm-hmm.
But unbeknownst to me, I had heard quite a bit of Adrian Belew at that time, just didn't know it, between, Shake Your Booty and Zappa, between Nine Inch Nail stuff, between Talking Head stuff. I always thought that was cool guitar, but like when I'm listening to the Downward Spiral on that, I guess that's Trent playing guitar or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just figure when I think of Nine Inch Nails, I just think of Trent Reznor. He just kind of
Sure.
does it all, which for
Yeah.
the most part,
I'm kind of
does.
similar that way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then Talking Heads, again, I figured it was,
All
David
David
Byrne or
Byrne.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Didn't do the deep dive on the liner notes at the time. I just thought it was hit music. And then, yeah, kind of through the back door, I became more aware of Adrian's stuff. And then, vis-a-vis all of his solo stuff as well, which I kind of was exploring and just getting ready for this. I went and listened to a bit more of his solo stuff. And that Twang Bar King record, man, like, I feel like he was like trying to channel Elvis on some of those tracks. He just wanted to be like an old time rock and roller,
Yeah, that record, those first couple solo records are really unique because he does like everything, like his songwriting is like his playing, like one song does not sound like the next. Like
Right.
you get that kind of like Elvis-y stuff on Twang Bar King, and then there's a couple tracks on that Twang Bar King record that sound like Kid A, like Radiohead stuff, like really weird, like pre-Radiohead. That's like a lot of vocal manipulation, lots of percussive weird noise and elements and loops and stuff going backwards. It's I kind of did the same thing, you know, obviously when I started working with him again, I kind of like went back into some of the stuff that I had never heard. And it was nice, like you were saying, Nick, to have more material to go back on that I'd
Yeah.
never really appreciated, to be like, oh wow, this is the first time I'm hearing this record that came out 30 or 40 years ago, you know. Um, and he's just, you know, the theme remains the same, is that his just approach to music in general is just, it's very special.
Yeah.
And even what he was doing then is just like, it's like, oh wow, this is like such a huge precursor to a lot of these things that, you know, like I said, like I mentioned, the Radiohead thing is it's really really interesting. You never would have thought that, you know. But yeah, right after a song that sounds like, you know, super swingy and like, you know, Elvisy kind of thing, because he's a great singer too. Like a lot of
Yeah.
people,
He is.
obviously his guitar playing is like primary what people know him for, but like he is an incredible singer. Like even still to this day, like if you didn't get a chance to see the Beat Tour, the man is just wailing and
Yeah.
still, you know, it's really impressive.
And you're on the inside, Blair, but if I were to ask you, what guitar tone do you most associate with Adrian? What is like home base guitar tone when you hear this particular mix of guitar effects and amps is undeniably Adrian Belew's sound?
Single coil pickups, Roland jazz chorus, and a fat compressor that is just squashed as much as it'll let you squash. That is like
Yeah.
Oh,
on everything that he does. That compressor is on, and it is, sustain is on 10. It is just as squishy as you can get it. And he actually has kind of been more of a convert, like he's made me more of a compression convert, because I always associated those like heavily compressed guitar tones with like country music and a lot of like
Hmm.
chicken picking stuff. And it turns out that you can do all that weird stuff that he does is the same thing. It's just a clean guitar amp, with gnarly compression. And obviously, like, you know, I, his use of fuzz, like with a lot of stuff, and his use of flanger is like, I think he's used the flanger pedal and that effect better than anyone throughout the years in multiple ways. Whether it's like getting those wild, you know, elephant talk sounds, you know, where
Hmm.
he's trying to channel, you know, animals, or he's doing like weird oscillating feedback through these pedals, or, you know, even with like killing the like speed and the depth on that thing and using like what is like the filter matrix mode on like an electric mistress is kind of like a
yeah.
parked flanger. um he just finds ways to, you know, just exploit that pedal, you know, even from the earlier days, you know, before there was all the axe effects stuff involved. He was using effects like to their maximum capability. But yeah, I'd say jazz chorus, compressor, and then, you know, flanger for sure.
Man, so that's like all that stuff there. Each of those elements, like through a not lifetime, but a couple decades of listening to Adrian's playing, like it's taken me like each of those things took their own amount of time for me to like hear in his playing, like to basically to hear that basically his bass is like a really clean guitar tone.
Yeah,
And then
it
it's like when
is.
that clicked, then it was like, oh, he's, you know, I'd see videos and then he's playing the jazz chorus and like, okay,
Hmm.
this is a clean basis. And then it's like the fuzz thing. Like, how does he
Yeah.
get that? Okay, so it's like a clean, it's not a cranked amp that's, or it's not a dirty amp. It's like a clean amp with fuzz is a specific thing versus like,
Yep.
you know, cranking something and running fuzz through it. Okay, there's one
Yeah.
level of thing. The flanger thing, like, because like you said, like there's sometimes like the parked flanger thing with the
Yep.
filter, like hearing that in there and like the compression is like that's still something that's a little bit beyond like my sonic wheelhouse where I don't use compression enough to like really get it. Like I hear it in his playing and I'm like, how do I get that thing? And his sound is just like those sounds are so associated with the way that he plays specific things, like specific
Hmm.
notes you can play, but it like the reaction of like the super compressed thing, like that really affects the way that those notes hit in a
It
specific. It's
does.
not just tone, it's like it's articulation, it's
Yeah.
Sure.
timbre,
Yeah.
it's control, it's, you know, all
Hmm.
that stuff. And yeah, it's so interesting, and I feel like that must be so cool to get to decode those sounds with him because they're
It's been awesome.
so layered and deep.
Yeah, his just like again, just his approach is always something where like he has used every piece of gear that's ever come out that he's been interested in. And
Yeah.
when guitar effects were like, in the 80s when everything was moving digital, like he was on board. Like he
Yeah.
wanted to try
That must have
all
been
of that
so
shit.
cool.
Yeah, he, used those like Johnson amps for a long time, which was like
Hmm.
solid state with like effects built in.
I forgot about those.
Fractal came out. He's all about the fractal. But again, he stayed with the Ultra. He never moved past it. And that's because, apparently he had spent thousands of hours, developing these sounds over the course of him owning this rig. And when they kept developing the new ones, he would get the new unit and there would be something left out that was kind of unpopular.
Hmm.
Turns out he loved it, and that's an algorithm not included in the new ones. So he just didn't want anything to do with it. I mean, right now his rig is, he's using the jazz chorus for the vintage side of his rig, but
Hmm.
his guitar rig is a fractal going through two EV powered speakers. So you talk about a clean platform,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like he is as clean as it comes. Gets all of his gain, out of either, fuzz pedals or like some of the algorithms on the fractal.
Hmm.
But you mentioned it too. It's not just, I can plug into that rig, you can plug into that rig, and it's not going to sound like Adrian. He has always been someone where it's kind of like the tone is in the hands kind of thing. His performance and how he utilizes, how he touches the guitar, so to speak, whether he's playing a riff or whether he's hitting his guitar with a piece of metal or playing behind the nut and bending it. It's all just it's so uniquely Adrian that like
Yeah.
we can plug into his rig and it will not sound like him.
Right. And I think it's also, we have to mention that it's like all those techniques. It's like you see people do all that stuff. I was just watching that Bowie much-lauded performance today, where it's like, he's playing. I think it's maybe in Stay he has like a big guitar feature, and he's like holding these long notes and doing the swell with his volume
Hmm.
knob, and then reaching up. And instead of it's not a whammy bar thing. He's reaching up and playing the
Pushing
string
behind the
behind.
note.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
like all
behind the
that
nut.
stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to put together that that's how he makes that sound unless I was watching it. But I
Yeah.
think it's also important to mention that it's like a lot of that stuff, like he invented those sounds that then people took,
100%.
like experimental guitar, like was
Yeah.
a lot of experimental guitar that came after him was built on those techniques that he just came up with in his
Sure.
hands,
Yeah, I think Zappa called him a stunt guitarist is how
Yeah.
he was hired on.
Right.
And that tracks. I mean, you just watch any video of him playing and he's here, there, he's using objects that are not associated with a musical instrument, whether it's a drill or a spring or a piece of metal. Yeah, his use of feedback, like in his early stages where he's
Yeah.
just
The
hammering,
feedback stuff
you
is
know,
awesome.
yeah, and that's just, anyone can turn a big muff on and get their amp to feedback, but how he does it, when he was running it into his jazz chorus and he's flicking the chorus on and changing the speed and the depth and
Hmm.
it's moving his guitar, like it's just it's a whole thing. And
Yeah.
he was like, as far as like the innovation is concerned, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find anyone even in the same era as him trying that kind of stuff out after him.
Yeah.
Like he was the godfather of of swarm guitar and experimental guitar. And really, as a person like myself who just loves effects, I've always looked up to him as far as like someone where it's like, I'm not a shredder by any means. These guys in Nashville on Broadway run circles around me as far as like, playing and technique and theory and that kind of stuff. I've always been someone who loves to paint with the guitar. I love soundscapes, I love textures, I love all of that stuff. And he is the goat of all of that stuff
Totally.
for sure. Yeah.
And I was watching that same that link, that Bowie thing that Nick sent over, and watching him play, I could be like, I can see where like people like John Frusciante got stuff
Oh
from.
yeah.
Hmm.
I could see where people like Ed O'Brien from Radiohead
Hmm.
got stuff from. And so when you talk about having that role, and it was interesting seeing how him and Carlos Alomar played off
Oh
each
yeah.
other. 'Cause
Talk about two different guitar
Hmm.
players.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like it's like Carlos. Okay, you're the and Bowie even introduces him as he's the rhythm guitar player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hold that down, and then Adrian, you just sprinkle whatever you want on
To
top,
be
noises, weird
Adrian.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And it's the same thing with Talking Heads, same period, he's doing the same thing where it's David Byrne and Jerry Harris and they're playing rhythm guitar parts, and Adrian is like, he's texture. And it's, you
Yeah.
know, I think of it as like he's a synth player, you know.
Yeah,
um
for sure.
and it's like he was, you know, like you said, among the first to do that. And it's, but that's like the role. It's like it's synthesizer. It's not like rhythm guitar doesn't necessarily fall into it. But then
Mm-mm.
you get into like the Crimson stuff, and he's
Hmm.
so funky too.
Very funky. Lots of that,
Yeah.
like chicka
Yep.
chicka chicka chicka, and a lot of that comes from the compression too, like
Mm-hmm.
that tone.
Oh,
Um, a lot, but yeah, his wrist and like it was a lot of fun as we were kind of like sound designing his rig, and he'd kind of like we'd be like, this sounds here, and we're listening to it, and we've got a shitload of pedals out on the floor trying to kind of capture that sound again, but just hearing him kind of like play some of these riffs and just kind of like looking over and just being like a little like like, oh, I'm actually here, like
yeah.
watching him do this. And he's just, yeah, it's yeah, he's just incredible. Yeah, the stylistically, yeah, a little funk, little prog, little
Mm-hmm.
rock. And then as you were talking about, kind of like him being like the lead guitarist and the dynamic of the difference of skill sets and approach. It's like even with Fripp, Fripp is can play every note in the book and
Yeah.
play it faster than anybody that's ever been alive. But, having his complementary role in, Fripp's songwriting where he's doing his thing, it was just a really great yin yang. And I think that's why I like that era of Crimson the best, where it's like there's the melodic aspect of it with the still psycho shred going
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
in the back, which is really rad.
So can you walk us through like, so for the Beat Tour, like what did that rig? You mentioned he had the Axe Effects, and then he also has the
EV
jazz
speakers.
chorus, and
Sure.
the EV speakers, and then the jazz chorus. Like, what does the rest of the rig look like? Because it's like, it is interesting that he's still going to a jazz chorus for vintage sounds, when it's like we're thinking about like, modeling can get there, but like he still has
Hmm.
that. It's not, we're not talking about like he's pulling out an old Tweed amp. He's pulling out
Yeah.
a jazz chorus. Like how does the rest of the rig look?
So the first thing that he asked me to come do was he was like, "Hey, Roland's got this new guitar synth pedal,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to get the sounds from my GR300 on this pedal, so I don't have to take this big clunky thing out, and blah blah blah." So we went out to try to kind of recreate some of those vintage sounds in the new effects. Quickly was just kind of like in there playing with them, and I was just kind of like, we'd play the new one and we'd get it close, and then we'd play the old one with his Twang Bar King guitar, and I just sat there and looked at him, and I was like, man, you if you're gonna go play these songs, you have to play that. Like you have to play
Yeah.
this old rig. Like you have to play that old synth. There's just like so many little nuances to like kind of how bad the tracking was on
Mm-hmm.
those vintage units, and there that you can't really recreate. It's just old components, and there's like slight drift here, and the pitch isn't always perfect. It kind of has these stepped features, and so that was kind of like the first thing was like, all right, let's take a step back and let's really like, if you want to get these sounds, let's just build you a hybrid rig. And so that's his rig with the Beat Tour, is just that. It's he's got his vintage GR300, and then we've got old big muffs and a few effects in the rack that are all going to the jazz chorus. And then the fractal is primarily going to the EV speakers, and he kind of goes between the two sounds.
Mm-hmm.
When he's using his Parker Fly guitar, that's got the piezo pickup on it, where he can kind of translate all of the weird MIDI synthy kind of stuff. But it wasn't the same as the old Roland pickup that was in his. He
Right.
had the big 24 pin connector built inside this Mustang, and these senses, like these little metal plates that are like little sensory buttons that are like kind of expression. It's got the filter knobs in there and everything. It was just something that you just had to play that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the rig is like kind of like two-sided. It's if he's playing his old, Mustang with that guitar synth, that's coming out of the jazz chorus. anytime that he would go to do his big oscillating feedback, that was very specific to a certain big muff with the jazz chorus specifically, kind of can't recreate that with another piece of gear. And then a lot of the stuff that he developed over the years with his fractal, that's anytime he'd play his Parker, which he's more comfortable playing the Parker, those guitars play like butter.
And
And
they
so
weigh
he
like
would
2 pounds.
they weigh nothing, and
Yeah.
honestly, that's a big deal. It's like the weight and the feel of it, the stability of it is just, Ken Parker built a perfect instrument, so to speak. Whether or not, the design kind of throws people off a little bit as far as aesthetically, because they don't think of it as a classic looking guitar. But again, Adrian's never been one to care about that. He
No.
just wants the next innovation, the newest thing that's coming out,
Yeah.
and
And shout
and
out
so
Ken
yeah,
Parker, who just passed away the other
yeah,
day.
is a very
Yeah.
very sad loss to the gear community for sure. The
Yeah.
guy was a genius for sure. But yeah, so his rig is like just a big hybrid rig. It's basically two rigs. We could have probably developed some of the things in the fractal to get close to some of those sounds, but I just remember sitting back there, and as a fan of his, just being like, dude, people want to see
People
this
want to see it.
guitar.
Yeah.
They want to see
Yeah.
you pull this guitar out. Then especially people that are coming that have seen you in the past, like they're going to be stoked just the fact that you have that around your neck. And then when they hear it and it's the same sounds, like that's you got to do that. And I think him and Fripp were two of the first people to ever get those GR 300s before those Crimson records came out. And I don't know too much of the story. I just kind of know that they were gifted them from Roland, and they obviously had a good relationship with Roland at the time, and it just totally blew their minds and just opened them up to a whole new world of guitar, playing guitar synth. And he's definitely took that and has just ran with it, and also exploited that as far as he can, just like he does every other effect. And that's, yeah, obviously very unique sound.
Yeah. Did like I don't know, so this is another hole for me. It's like
Sure.
I know what guitars he's playing in videos I like, like I haven't followed. It's like I know that he's been playing the Parker for a lot for the last 30 or so years, and
Yeah.
I know about the Mustang, and then it's like the early stuff I associate him with that Strat
That
so
Strat,
much.
yeah, that Strat
Did
is
you meet the
awesome.
Strat? Have you has
I
that
did meet the Strat, man. The Strat is really cool. We it's got like one of those alembic like Stratoblaster boost in it, and
Mm.
we were
Okay.
kind of worried because we wondered if that was because that's what he's like infamously uses to get most of that feedback oscillation
Mm-hmm.
with the jazz chorus from, and it's because the signal was so damn hot. It was
Uh-huh.
just like boosted out, right? And I did meet the Strat. I played it. It's heavy. It's a
Oh,
really heavy old Strat. Um, it's a piece of history, it's rock and roll history in
yeah.
my opinion. But that one stays at home on the Beat Tour. He's got the Twang Bar King Mustang out, and then he's got a backup that's kind of one of those Roland GR guitars
Okay.
with the built-in pickup, and then it's his Parkers, and he's got a signature Parker Fly that he's had for decades, and that's what he's gonna that's the one he's most comfortable on, and he plays the crap out of it. So
Yeah.
I didn't encourage him to not play that one.
Yeah. So something we always do on these episodes is we got to talk about our like Hallmark records. So like, guests can go first here. What are, say, your three favorite, they don't have to be officially
Oof.
released records. They can just do three favorite things that if somebody came to you and they don't know anything about Adrian Belew, or maybe they're just like, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to get into. What are your things that you
Hmm.
would point somebody in?
Ooh, I'd probably live in the Crimson era. I'd probably go Discipline just because
Mm-hmm.
you've got things like Elephant Talk on there, but then you've got like Mate Kudasai, which shows this beautiful, those one of the sweetest sounding slide guitar songs that
Yeah.
I just love so much. And he plays it backwards. He plays a slide like up on top of his guitar like a pedal steel player. Um, I'd say Discipline for sure. And then honestly, probably got to just go with his first couple solo records, like the Twang Bar King and Lone Rhino are both just like so like I'm gonna do what I want to do. And I feel like he
Yeah.
was in a spot musically where he had approval from other artists where it's like, hey, we like what you're doing. And so when he went into the studio, I think he just had no restrictions, and he just
Yeah.
kind of got to do whatever he wants. That'd probably be my three of
Okay.
him that I would say. But it's like, again, my first fascination with him was like, yeah, who's playing that guitar part on, just like I imagined or whatever from Nine
Mhm.
Inch Nails. Like, that's so cool. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
So, there's little songs that are here and there that, there's his guitar synth is in the chorus of "You Can Call Me Al,"
Yeah.
by Paul Simon with the horns. And it dun 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 dun. That's a guitar synth in there too. And no one ever knows that. So it's
I
like,
didn't know that.
um, yeah, so it's like he's just sprinkled in all over the place,
Yeah.
from his discography. But I'd say the first two, Lone Rhino and Twin Bar King, and then Discipline, from King Crimson would be
Okay.
would be my three to go take a listen to.
I
Yeah,
want to say shout out. I want to shout out right there on Lone Rhino. Just Big Electric Cat, the first track. Man,
yeah,
that's the first song on
uh-huh.
his first record. And I don't know what, like, the way he's making some of those sounds is so, I
Yeah,
mean, that was 1981. That's
it's
44 years
crazy.
ago, and I still don't know what's going on some of that stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's again just lots of his technique,
Mm-hmm.
mad compression, a great use of octave fuzz, and then
Yeah.
how he's using his notes. He does a lot of like volume swelling either with his guitar knob or with a pedal. And I think it's funny. I read interviews with him where he explained how he comes up with some of his sounds and how his inspiration is not other people's records that he likes or other players that he likes, but things that he hears outside of music, animals specifically, which is why you have Lone Rhino,
Mm-hmm.
you have Elephant Talk, you have Big Electric Cat, you have all of these things where he's like trying to make, you know animal sounds on his
Yeah.
guitars, and the seagulls sounds that he makes with the slide, with his echo and volume swells. And it's just all this stuff where it was just like not really used in music. That
Mm-hmm.
was not what people were trying to do, but that's what Adrian was trying to do. And
Yeah.
he's left a legacy of that exploration for sure.
All right. So we'll list our favorites too, but I do have to ask now if you have any insight into this. Now, you I would assume you might not, because it's not like they were playing this. You didn't have to decode this for the beat tour. But one
Sure.
specific sound that has vexed me for a while, but specifically recently, is my favorite example of Adrian's playing, that I've always been like, if I could just figure out how to do that. And it's, in a
Uh-huh.
way, it seems obvious. Like, for a long time, it was like, it's just a ring modulator, I guess. But I think there's more going on. So on the opening track to Talking Heads Remain in Light, Born Under Punches,
Hmm.
he takes a guitar solo. Jason, you know this solo?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It sounds to me like, I remember, for a long time when I heard that as a teenager, I thought it was a telephone. I thought it
Yeah.
was like a telephone dialing like a touch tone telephone.
Uh-huh.
But there's too many notes. Like, I could know that,
Yeah.
like, it must be a synth. But then at some point, I got hip to the fact that it wasn't a synth; it was Adrian doing
Yep.
something. And then
Yeah.
I've lived with that and been like, it's some sort of like ring mod with like a tight gate or something. Now, granted, it's like we have Adrian and his thing there, and then we have Eno producing it,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
Sure.
anything could be happening. But
Uh-huh.
the thing that has vexed me, especially recently, is that I've lived with that for most of my, guitar life, with that solo, and loved that solo. But when they did like the new mix for Apple, or I guess it's on Spotify too. I use Apple Music. There's a new mix from the last couple of years that's on Apple Music of that album, and
Okay.
it does that solo is different. Like,
Huh.
it sounds more like a guitar.
Yeah.
It's not as confusing. Like, it doesn't have that same thing. Like, the tone of that has changed, and it made me wonder, like, what sort of production decisions got there or anything like that. Has he ever talked about that, or did you ever have to like come up with? I mean, I assume you didn't have to come up with like a sound for that song because you weren't
No, that's
playing it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sometimes, those remixes that come out, you're like, man, this sounds awesome. I've never heard this part before. And then sometimes they come out and you're like, wait, what happened to that track? It's
Yeah,
buried now. So I have to listen to the new one. I we've definitely worked on some of his stuff because he still tours with Jerry,
right.
and does some Remain in Light stuff. Um, Born Under Punches is definitely a preset that we have worked with.
Okay.
By this point, it's pretty much all lives in the fractal.
Okay.
The fractal wasn't out then, obviously, and he was a big user of the EHX frequency analyzer, which is like the old school ring mod.
Yeah.
Um, so I would probably attribute it to that, and again with the use of compression and fuzz, and sometimes his use of fuzz is not like people expect. Like when you hear the word fuzz, you might think of like, Smashing Pumpkins or like you hear
Yeah.
this real woolly thing. But when you're hitting single notes on a fuzz and you're running them into heavy compression and ring mod and stuff like that, and always a little bit of echo on there. And then probably honestly, I would be hard pressed if the polychorus or the echo flanger was not on during that
Mm-hmm.
recording as well. Um, yeah, I don't know exactly.
Just all
I
the
don't know
modulation.
exactly
Yeah.
all
Just
of the
flip on all
modulation.
the modulation.
Yeah, and then you put Brian Eno in the behind the board, being like, I like that. We're gonna keep that and do this on top of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that telephony sound is definitely like ring mod vibes.
Right. Yeah.
Um, but he used a lot of other weird stuff that's like not really out like anymore, like kind of like pitch synthesizers that were like uh control voltage pitch things that were like
Mm.
you hit a note on the guitar and it doesn't make the note that you played, but
Yeah.
it's reacting to the CV that's coming out. Um, it could be anything, honestly. I know that he, loves the studio aspect of getting in there and exploring and twisting knobs, and a lot of the parts in his, catalog has been experimenting after the fact, where the track has been recorded and they're just going to town on some of
Oh,
the
yeah.
effects
Okay.
afterwards. So I
I
could
could see
see
that
that being
too.
something like there too, where it's like he might have tracked it with a ring mod and they might have added some stuff in post. I don't know, but now I'm gonna have to ask him.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you get an
I have to
answer,
find out the
please.
details. Yeah, we'll drop it in the comments.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to interject real quick right here because time traveling forward a few days, Blair actually checked in with Adrian and got the answer to how Adrian made the cool, crazy sounds on Born Under Punches. And here is what he texted me. Blair says, that part was created in the studio by using a Lexicon Primetime. The Primetime was a while ahead of its time rack delay. The unique part about the unit was its addition of a repeat hold button, where basically you could be playing and push a button on the unit that would grab the repeats and have them infinitely cycle over and over. After you grab the repeat, you can manipulate it. So that sound, the one that makes the one that sounds like an alien making a telephone call, is a single guitar line in the Lexicon, the repeat hold button pushed to capture the notes, and then Adrian just twisting knobs, manipulating the delay time, which in return changed the speed and the pitch of the captured sound. And I will tell you, this is me now talking, not Blair's text. I will tell you, I have heavily used that Lexicon Primetime on a number of my own recordings. I've never made that sound. I never even would have guessed that was the effect that he was using. But that is very truly my favorite delay unit, and I think it's one of the coolest effects of all effects. And I'm saying this because if anybody is hearing this and wants to make a delay pedal that just copies the functions or even some of the functions of the Lexicon Primetime, please do it and then reach out to me and I will buy it from you because it's the coolest pedal. Anyway, didn't expect that to be the answer. Now back to our show. So Jason, what are your favorite, like where would you direct somebody?
I would say, you have to put one of those three early 80s Crimson records in the mix. I'm probably more Three of a Perfect Pair.
Okay.
That's the one I tend to go back to a little more often. It's a fun one. It's a weird one. So that's one I like. And then I'd probably go Twang Bar King as well. And, something like, let's go. I'm just like, oh yeah, here's a deep cut. Here we go. Halloween '77, Frank Zappa.
Ah, yeah.
You know, I think his how he plays off of Zappa is a real interesting sound. I mean, and it's it's like 4 hours or whatever. That live record's like 3 CDs. But yeah, dip your toe into some Frank Zappa, Adrian Belew. I think that would be that'd be the move.
I like how
Nice.
there's actually very little, there's not a lot, as much overlap as I thought there would be between us. But we're all in the same period. For me, King Crimson wise, it's Discipline. Favorite track is Born Under Punches, but I would say for my example of Adrian with Talking Heads, I'm going with Rome 1980.
Okay.
And there's the concert movie of that where you can see what's going on, and I think
Sure.
that's a
Yeah,
big
that's
part
the
of
one.
it.
Yeah, the DVD. Yeah. Yep.
And
That's
then
rad.
and then there's also that Bowie 1978 much-lauded performance. It's like, so
That's a
that's
good
right
one.
in the my window is real narrow there, where it's like the stuff that really
Sure.
hits. And I like stuff outside of that. I like, but that era, that couple years there really, really does it for me. Where I'm
Nice.
just so fascinated with that era of gear too. That's
Yeah.
part
Oh,
of it.
yeah.
It's just like, how do you make these sounds with this gear? So, yeah, those are my picks.
Nice. Yeah. The three of, I mean, it's hard to pick a Crimson record. I could have easily said, just go listen to the three, to the three Crimson records with
Totally.
Belew on it if
Yeah.
you want an example. Yeah, the three of a perfect pair, you got Man with an Open Heart and Dig Me, and you got a lot of weird sounds that are musical and beautiful. And it's like, yeah, it's just great stuff. Great stuff all around.
Yeah. So Blair, do you have stuff coming up with Adrian? Like any plans working together?
Yeah, there's well, they just got back from Japan. They did a show out there at Budokan, and we're just going to kind of reset his studio and
Awesome.
got some plans to record some stuff. And I know he's got some 2026 plans to kind of get out on the road. I think him and Jerry might do some more Remain in Light stuff. They're hoping to do some more beat stuff. And I know that he is just constantly putting out his own music. So he's going to record another solo record, just add to his extensive personal discography. Yeah, another thing that I would just popped up in my head is he did that do y'all remember that app that he did? It's called the Flux app.
Yes.
No, I don't remember that.
He developed this app. This is probably like 15 years ago at least, but he worked with a guy to develop this app that kind of like never played the same thing twice, and it was like musical and visual. It's like an iPad app. It's crazy to me as a guy who sells lots of guitar pedals, and a big thing lately has been like glitchy pedals or pedals that like are constantly listening and resampling and then kind of like bringing pieces of your riff back into the mix afterwards. Red Panda Lab does that, Chase Bliss does that, a lot of people, that's like a thing. And here he was, 10, 15 years ago working with a guy on an app because he just wanted that to be a thing that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Just an innovator all around. But that's my plans with him for 2026. Or I'm just kind of like, you tell me, you say when, and I'll be there. I love working with him so much, so I'll take any opportunity I can to do so.
That's so cool, and that's got to be
Yeah.
so fun, and it's got to be
It
really
is.
good for him to be partnering with a guy who owns a music store.
It doesn't hurt. I definitely have
You
a
have
lot
some
of stuff at my
access.
disposal
Yeah.
and some opinions as well. But I mean, he's just like, I see guitar guys that are, my age and younger even, that are just kind of like, they find their sound and they're good with it. And that's great, like if you kind of find your thing, but he just still approaches music and specifically the guitar like he's a kid. Like
So cool.
everything that comes out, he wants to try it. And he still plays with a big smile on his face. And I promise you, it's not fake. He genuinely just loves playing the guitar. He loves coming up with new sounds and loves creating. And it's just such a pleasure to be around him, and to hear his brain work when he's got an idea about something. I'm just kind of like, okay, yeah, let's try that. It's like it's just super rad. So I feel very fortunate to be able to have that time with him.
That's too cool.
Dig it.
Yeah.
Well, Blair, thank you for coming on, talking to us, and of course, next time we're in either of us are in Nashville, Jason's going to be there very soon. We got to stop in, we got to check out some stuff, and anybody listening, definitely stop by Eastside Music Supply, pay Blair a visit.
That's right.
Yeah. I'm here, baby. Let's go.
All right, man. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Y'all have a good day.
All right. See you, bud.
Yeah. See ya.
All right. So thank you to Blair White for coming on, talking to us about Adrian.
Yes.
Jason.
I want to go get a jazz course again. I had one in grad school.
Oh, did you? I never had
heavy.
One. I want one. The
guy I bought it from
too heavy.
Mounted a 2x4 to the back of the amp so it'd be easier to pick up. Shout out Tony Brown. That's where I bought that amp from.
You gonna go look at vintage EHX gear, try and get your Adrian Belew sounds?
I can't say I'm not interested in a frequency analyzer.
I know, right?
You know what I'm saying? We're gonna need to find out a compressor. We're gonna need to buy the compressor. Hopefully by now we've got an update on the solo, the talking head solo.
If we do, we'll drop it in.
We
will have dropped it in.
We would have dropped it. You'd already know about this. This is all old news to you because we're time traveling around here. But yeah, I feel like I need to get a compressor and just crank it all knobs at 11.
Yeah.
Know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna squash some things, see what I can conjure up.
That's right.
Well, thanks Blair.
Again.
We got a lot of knowledge there.
That's right.
Go check out
thanks
some Adrian.
Thanks to Vega Trim for sponsoring this episode. If you want to get some of those Twang Bar King licks, you gotta have a wiggle stick. So dig out your hardtail guitar, pull out the bridge, drop in a Vega Trim, leave all your power tools at home.
Yep. And don't forget, you can get at us by dropping us a line at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com, and you can send us a text or leave us a voicemail at 319-423-9734.
There we go. All right, we did it. We'll see you all next time.
See you next time.